Bring the body upright. Have a feeling of very, very, very light pulling upwards from the feet right through to the crown of the head. That engages all the muscles. And then at the same time, have a feeling of flowing down. This is the muscles softening and gravity being allowed to act on the body. Let the body be very simple and released. When we bend the knees, it's going to have the effect of bringing the center of gravity forwards, because when the knees go forwards, the rest of the body is going to follow it slightly forwards. That's going to put us into a new position. So we have to make adjustments to enable the weight to be in the center of the feet. So the first movement of the form, or the first movement of the open and close exercise, is to bend the knees to 11 and 1 o'clock, keeping the weight in the center of the feet. And the adjustments we make in the hip joints and the lower back and the shoulder girdle adjustments are key to keeping the weight in the center of the feet. It feels like I'm sliding down my alignment, like there's a tube, and on the outside of that tube, everything is sliding down. That tube remains in place. And then to come up, when I come up, my knees are going to be going slightly backwards, and my alignment comes slightly more towards my back of the foot, over the back of the foot. But to keep the connection in the center of the foot, again, coming up, I have to make adjustments. And the art of Tai Chi is to constantly, continually make changes and adjustments to the new situation. We learn it in the body, which parts of the body can change. The classics tell us that when one part changes, everything adjusts, or everything changes. And I like to use the word adjust rather than change. If we can find stability, then I keep adjusting to maintain my stability. So when I sink down here, both feet continue to connect and press onto the ground. When I come up, both feet feel connected. When I open up into parallel stance, both feet are connected as I bend my knees. As I continue to drop my weight to my right foot, I have to make further adjustments, further changes to stabilize on one leg while I adjust the other and then move across. As I'm moving across, I have to make continuous adjustments to stabilize the force of my weight down to the ground. As I come back to both feet, you'll feel how to release to both feet. You make adjustments in the hip joints, in the lower back, and in the shoulder girdle to stabilize your force in the ground. When I come up, it's the same thing. My arms are going forward, which has a tendency to bring me forwards. The weight of my arms, each arm weighs about 8 pounds, so the weight will tip me forward, but I adjust in the lower back as the arms come up to keep the connection centered and balanced over the feet. I always want my connection to be centered in the feet, balanced and grounded. And our work when we train is to maintain that connection in the feet, maintain that feeling of letting the body press onto the ground, noticing when the body feels held, tense, or unable to change, and releasing into that adjustment again. So the first loosening exercise, we're told to move the body smoothly from one foot to the other. And for a long time, the external movements of staying upright, staying horizontal, keeping the hips level, I should say, in movement, and smoothly moving from one foot to the other is our focus. But this doesn't deal with the sinking and the grounding that enables us to stay nicely, firmly connected. So we need to add that into the process of moving. That comes to the internal changes and the internal adjustments, which is really what the intermediate training is about. So the external movements we know very well: move across, turn, back to the beginning, turn and sink. We know these movements well. The intermediate training and what to really focus on are two things. One is the timing, making sure that when my physical movement is complete, everything is released. That's the first thing. Timing so that as I activate the leg and let the knee open up, finish. So that lifting or that engagement finishes altogether and immediately flows on into the release that finishes together. So the timing is the same as this exercise. Everything finishes at the top, and at the top you let go. Everything finishes together at the bottom. So the physical movement finishes and the physical release inside the body finishes together. The physical engagement of the muscles finishes right at the top. So we keep lifting very lightly with the legs. The knees keep opening, very lightly, finish at the top. And as soon as we get to the top, change to release. Everything adjusting. Same with the first loosening exercise here. We don't want to finish here and still have something we can release. We want to release as we're moving. So this is the timing of everything finishing together. It's a process that goes on and on and on in our practice to become more and more refined so that I feel every single part of the body adjusting as I move. There's nothing left that I need to change as I arrive. And then I activate and finish at the top. I don't finish with the arms here. I don't finish up and the arms are here. As I lift and as I turn and as I square, I'm at the top, ready to release. First thing is timing. Timing exists in every single move. Every time we come to the completion of a move, brush left knee twist step, for example, when I arrive in the posture, I'm fully released. So we're looking at arriving in the posture, push, fully released. Connected, stable, upright, and fully released in the posture. The timing is the same in every posture. When we arrive in the posture, whatever the posture is, as I arrive, I'm fully released. At the end of the arriving, fully released. So in your form, in your practice, if you're looking at timing, you can bring that into any move. Diagonal flying, turn the waist and sink. When the waist finishes, when the body finishes sinking, the posture is there. Diagonal flying. Second thing is grounding. Grounding is the ability to adjust in transition. So beginners will do this exercise and think about the turning and the movement, but not pay attention to the grounding. And what they'll find is their movement's nice and smooth, their movement's nice and accurate, the timing might be right of the moving, but they're not grounded. There's tension in the ankle, there's tension in the lower back, and they don't feel fully relaxed and pressed onto the ground. So we want to try and include the grounding into the movement as well. Now, the grounding takes place right from the very first moment you start to move. Actually, I'd go further than that, and I'd say the grounding takes place ahead of the movement. The releasing of the muscles inside allow the movement to take place. And if your movement can follow your releasing, your intention goes to the foot. You feel head, top, and foot. Your muscles then start to soften. That generates the movement towards the foot. And it allows you to stay stable the whole time you're moving. It's not that you arrive and become stable. You're stable the whole time you're moving towards your foot. So it's like you're pouring water into a glass. The water is in the glass the whole time you're pouring more. You're stable the whole time you move. It's not that you pour the water and then the water arrives. It's increasing as you move. In order to do that, you need to be connected to start. The connection needs to be there. And then you're releasing the muscles, letting the movement follow, letting the movement like a boat on water. The water moves, you're the boat, the water moves, and the boat can travel. The water moves, which is the release. Muscles change from being dense or being dense is the wrong word. The muscles change from activation to release. It makes them more fluid. That fluidity generates, with the pressure of the weight of the body, that fluidity creates a flow towards the foot. And you follow it. Okay? Tai Chi is the art of following the changes and adjusting. So I'm grounded, I'm grounded, I'm grounded, I finish. Activate, I'm grounded as I activate, I'm grounded in this leg, I release, I'm grounded, I'm grounded, I'm grounded, I finish. So let's just play the first loosening exercise a little bit. And I want to talk about knowing which principles to work with in Tai Chi. Knowing which principles to work with. People often ask me, what should I focus on next? I say, well, what you focus on next depends on what you're focusing on now. Oh, sorry, my light has fallen off. Just put that back in place. And I'll carry on. What should you focus on in your Tai Chi? When I started Tai Chi, the principles are quite straightforward and simple. And I was probably able to get about one move in 10 correct. And as I progressed, I could get 2 moves in 10 or three moves in 10. So if I was thinking about being upright, I probably was upright in 1 move or 2 moves out of 10. So going through the form, lost it quite a lot of the time, but sometimes in some moves, I found I could be upright. If I was looking at the hips being level, I could find that maybe 3 or 4 times out of 10 moves, I could keep the hips level, they weren't tilting me. And so on. And 2 or 3 out of 10 is a good number. Whereas if you choose something really ridiculously complicated, you might only get 1 in 30 or 40. It's not quite enough to give you enthusiasm. So if you choose a principle that's really difficult, really deep, and you have to be really focused on it and really in it well, and you can only really get it occasionally, or you don't quite know how you got it right, it was by accident, it's almost like too difficult for you. And the temptation at that point is that you'll lose enthusiasm for your practice. So you want to practice something that is achievable, but not too difficult. So which principles should you choose? Any principle that you can achieve, but you need to work on a little bit to make it happen. So if we're talking about maybe lifting up and sinking at the same time, that's quite a complicated principle, and it'll be right for some people and maybe a little bit too difficult for others. If we're talking about all the movements finishing at the same time, the internal and the external, that's quite a complicated principle too, because feeling the body and timing it is quite complicated. And I wouldn't expect you to get that right every time. In your own practice, you will know for yourself your level of ability or achievement to make the principles happen in your movement. And really, I'm talking about once you've gone beyond knowing the moves, once you really know the moves well, what principles you should follow principles, not movements. You should aim to make the principles come alive in your form. Principles are present in your form. Jin says the form is like a shell, just an empty shell. The moves just like an empty shell, and you put the principles into the form so that you can get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 out of 10 right. Each time a few more, and eventually you fill out this shell with the principles that are operating in your movements. So the way I instruct, or the way I share my Tai Chi, is mainly look at the principles and see how they fit into each move. And to gain the enthusiasm of your practice, make sure you can achieve what you're trying to do. Make sure it's not too big a leap into something difficult. Like don't step in the deep end of the pool before you can swim. Know that the deep end of the pool is there and that you're slowly going to progress towards it. Otherwise, you're overwhelmed. And when you're overwhelmed, you'll end up thinking about things and worrying about it. And how can you ever ground and settle when you're overwhelmed? You need to be calm in your body and settled in your practice to get the most out of your practice, to feel good about it, and to move on. And to the best things, you want to practice. You want to practice. It makes you want to practice because you enjoy it. So, principles. Principles of the form. As an exercise, take a piece of paper and write down as many principles as you can. As many principles as you can, just to write them down, just so that you know what you're looking for in your practice. And some of them will be obvious, like stay upright. And some of them will be vague. And some of them you'll forget, and some of them you'll know well. And just to practice in a different way, so it's not always just doing the same thing, but maybe take a piece of paper, write them down. Then you can ask a question. When I do brush left knee twist step, go through the list, go through the list. Do brush, say for one of your practices at home, for one of your practices for half an hour, do the same move for half an hour and go through your list. So your list says be upright. The most obvious principle in Tai Chi. Brush left knee twist step from play guitar. Can I stay upright? Can I move and remain upright? If you can, if that's something you can achieve, you move on to the next on the list, which might be, can I stay with my center line in the middle rather than here? So when I finish, when I come centrally stable in my bow stance, can I keep my center line between the feet with my hips forwards and my shoulders in line? Principle, structure of posture. And I'll go through the same posture. Open, turn back, step, arrive. Am I in the middle? And do that half a dozen times and see if you can achieve it. Next on the list, single weighted stepping. Oh yeah, remember that one. Okay, let's do it then. Lift hands, turn open, turn back, and single weighted stepping. Are you tightening to move your left leg? Are you static to move your left leg? Or are you making fluid changes as you step? Do you understand the principle of remaining buoyant, opening the lower back, softening the shoulders to make adjustments to the weight of your leg changing position? Because the leg weighs 20 pounds. Does it? 15 pounds. It's moving from here to here. That movement is going to affect your balance, without a doubt. Do you lock on and hold on to your balance, or do you soften and make buoyant adjustments to your balance when you move? What is your understanding of single weighted step? So we do the exercise. When you step, do you understand the changes you need to make to step in such a way that you remain stable, you remain buoyant, you remain changing while you step, and then glide in? And next to your piece of paper, you can write down the percentage you feel you understand that principle. And you note, maybe this one has more work to do than I thought, or yes, this is something I might focus on for the next month or two. Or, no, I don't like this principle, it's too difficult, I'm going to leave that one alone for a bit, I'm going to work on something else. Because the tendency is that when we move, we lock on and we tighten in order to have something, in order to have a stability we understand. Okay, so stability comes from being rigid, stable, or being fluid and changing, stable. One's Tai Chi, one's external martial arts. You get rigid and stable and strong, and your structure is definite, aligned, organized, and the force goes through your structure, but there's no change. And you're powerful, and you can block, and you can turn and use that structure to help you overcome forces. But in Tai Chi, we're fluid. We're released. We're able to change. We're free. We're able to flow with. So you go down your list and you might come to the next, which adds on to single weighted stepping, which is that you don't step with the foot, you step with the hips. So when you turn the hips, the thigh moves. When you turn the hips, the thigh is attached to the hips. And when you turn the hips, the thigh moves. So it's the hips and the thigh that move your foot, not you don't step with the foot. Single weighted stepping is a misnomer, really, because you're not stepping. You're moving your center and you're moving your thigh as you turn your hips and you turn your thigh. So you fold your arms and you move your thigh all as one, because these three moves, the arm folding in, the arm folding down, and the movement of the thigh, all come from the turning of the hips. All come from the turning of the waist. All come from the turning of the waist, happening together. And this is a great posture because you've got the whole body involved in one turning. So you look at it, you say, is that what I'm doing in my practice? Or am I folding my arms by themselves? Am I doing it with my arms, or am I spiraling to fold, to step, to glide in? And you look at that posture, you look at that principle, and you ask yourself, how much of that do I do in the form? When you look at all the moves in the form, where you turn, sit back, roll back. When you turn open, is your arm following the turning of the hips? When you turn back, is your arm following the turning of the waist and the hips? One of the principles is that the arms don't move by themselves. There's no independent movement of the arms. So that should clearly be somewhere on the list, that the hands don't move by themselves. There's no independent movement of the arms. The arms always following the whole body moving. When the body sinks, the shoulders drop and the arm changes. When the body turns, the shoulders turn and the arm follows it. And the fingers feel like they are following the base. The base leads, the hands follow the base. There's no gap. It's all one unit, but the arms follow the base. Beginners, we teach coordination. Everything happens at the same time. Externally, everything happens at the same time externally, which means we don't have to focus on the changes so much. So we time the moves so that, for example, roll back, so you can see my feet, roll back, you sit back, you turn open, you turn back, and here, as you move forward, you coordinate the moves so your hands arrive at the same time that you reach 50-50. Your body's sinking into 50-50. As you sink, your left arm drops, your wrists touch in the posture as you arrive in the 50-50 stance, upright, centered. As you come forward, you sink. As you come forward, you drop your shoulder girdle, your left arm drops, the hands touch as you arrive. This is coordination. Coordination leads to a much more complex principle called synchronization. And that may be on your list as well, depending on your practice. Not often talked about in the Tai Chi classics. Synchronization, think of the carriages of a train. When the engine moves, the next carriage engages and follows. The next carriage Small amount of slack, the next carriage follows. So when the train moves at speed and all the carriages are engaged, they all move together. But it's determined by the leading carriage. The movement of the back carriages are passive, and they're determined by what the leading engine, how the speed or the acceleration of the leading engine, everything else follows. That's more like synchronization. So the muscles in the legs changing are like the engine which drives the movement. When the muscles change, the carriages are the rest of the body. When the legs change, immediately, if engaged, if connected, the rest of the body follows. So it is all as one unit, but it's synchronized. When the muscles engage to lift, if the muscles aren't connected, if the body isn't connected, you might get the muscles of the legs starting and then the arms joining in. But when connected as one unit, as the muscles of the legs activate, so do the arms. This is more synchronization. And we aim to move from an understanding of being coordinated to an understanding of being synchronized. So synchronization of the movement is much more to do with feeling the sensations in the body and following the sensations. Next on my list, issuing, activation of the force. The body needs to be connected, just like those balls in Newton's cradle. When one drops, all the balls are touching, they're all loose, but they're connected. The force goes through the balls and the end one goes off. The balls need to be connected. The parts of the body need to be connected together. There's no tension in the body that holds one part of the body away from another part of the body. That's like the balls being separated. The balls need to be connected. The weight of the body dropped through the structure. First thing is to connect the body. In each posture, is the body fully connected? Then the activation is the back knee very, very slightly opening. Very, very slightly opening the back knee. This will increase the force on the back foot into the ground and equally increase the force forward of the hand. So say I do a posture like brush left knee twister. This is where the wall training with the wall is really useful because you can feel when you're touching the wall and you're released and connected, when you activate the back leg, you immediately feel it, the hand pressing into the wall with the same amount of force. So the force goes through your body to the hand. So when you're connected and you activate the back leg, you immediately feel that force in the hand. In the form, the wall isn't there. So the hand, that force that comes to the hand, makes the hand move about an inch. 1 inch punch makes the hand move about an inch. Temptation, of course, is to push the hand out, but that's independent movement of the arm. We want to train it in such a way so that being connected, when we activate the back leg, when we're connected, the hand travels out. And the intention is forwards. The intention is forwards, and we're also listening to the body activate. Then you ask yourself, how many times out of 10, or when I go through a form, how many times do I feel a genuine feeling like my hand is becoming alive and activated when I activate my foot, or when I open my back knee and reach out. And in this way, you go through the principles. And you might say, well, that's interesting. That's not happening very often. That's something that I want to train, that I want to bring into my practice. Now I realize I'm talking a lot in this class, but because there aren't any students tonight, it's me to the camera. I'm sharing something of my thoughts on how to practice. The most efficient way to practice is to practice one thing well. Temptation when we do the form is that our mind is like a ping pong ball. Now I'm practicing alignment, now I'm practicing loose hips, now I'm practicing grounding, now I'm practicing staying upright, now I'm practicing everything. Do you see what I mean? So one posture, your mind focuses on one principle. Next posture, your mind focuses on another principle. Next posture, you're somewhere else. And you're like a ping pong ball going between the different principles. None of them get practiced well or deeply. Focus on one principle and stay with one principle. Don't worry about all the other ones. It's like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. When you get one piece right in a jigsaw puzzle, all of a sudden, all the ones around it start getting more and more useful. When you get one principle working better or well or more fully working, it has a knock-on effect to the other principles. And the most efficient way of training is to stay with one principle for a long time, maybe a month. Make it your primary principle that you're focusing on for a month. And I'm talking about really when you know the moves well and you're working with principles and you're trying to fill out that shell with principles. Work with one principle until you get sick to death of it and need to move on, or until you get slightly better and more understanding of it. But you can imagine if you're doing a form, 37 movement form, every single movement, you look at one principle, you're looking at that one principle 37 times. Each time you do it, as you go through the form, you deepen and you settle into it and you aim to get it more and more as you want it, 37 times. And look at the difference between a form where you're training like that and a form where you're allowing the form and the movements of the form to influence where you're thinking. We want to develop a very strong intention that is centered. Tai Chi gives us that chance. So when I do my form, in my mind is my list. In my mind are the highlighted ones on that list that interest me, that I think I can attain. 2 out of 10, 3 or 4 out of 10, not 10 out of 10, because I know those already. Not 9 out of 10, because I sort of know those already if I concentrate well. 3 or 4 out of 10, 2, 3, 4 out of 10. Things I can do but are difficult, need a lot of attention. Choose one of those. Bring it to your form. Every movement contains principles. Bring that principle to mind while you're standing. I am now going to follow one principle for 37 moves. I will return my focus to that one principle for each movement. You set your intention. You set your goal. You set your idea of what you want to train. While you're going through your form, your awareness will be pulled by other things. Your awareness will be drawn to principles you don't need to go to. Your awareness will be drawn to the future, to the past, to the good, to the bad, to 1,008 different things. Aim to stay true to your one principle that you're trying to follow. This is meditation. Meditation is returning to your aim. In meditation, it might be the rising and falling of the belly. It might be the feeling of air entering or exiting at the nostrils. It can be words, it can be a mantra, it can be beads on a mala. Meditation is returning and maintaining a focus. So we do that in our Tai Chi. We use a tried and tested method to maintain a continuation of thought that's clear and unified and focused. And we do that with the principles in the form. One principle form. Doesn't matter about the others. If I'm looking at staying grounded, if I'm looking at staying grounded in my movement, I don't worry about single weighted stepping. If I'm grounded, single weighting stepping will be easy because they're all jigsaw pieces that match together. If I'm staying grounded, I don't worry about being upright. But because they're jigsaw pieces, being upright will help my grounding. Can you see how there's a knock-on effect between all of them? So I maintain my focus on grounding. My grounding starts as soon as I move and continues grounding, 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 making adjustments to be stable, not locking on and staying hard, stable, but buoyant, stable, focusing on that buoyant stability, changing notice my other foot, because I'm going to pour my weight this way, just like pouring a cup of water across. So notice the changes I need to make to keep that foot soft, flowing into it, grounding into it as I move across. Don't worry about the hips staying level. If they're level, it will be easier to be grounded, but don't worry about the other principles. Don't worry about the hands following the movements of the body. Just work on staying stable. Turn back and work on releasing to stay stable. Can you see how you focus? You bring your whole being onto that one focus. When you lift, you activate the legs. You do what you need to do in the form, but your focus is the main principle you're working with. When you lift, remember that your knees are coming backwards. Your center of gravity is moving slightly backwards. You need to make adjustments to maintain your grounding. Your arms are going forwards, which you're going to want to topple this way. Your body's going slightly backwards, which is going to make your weight go to different parts of your feet. You have to make adjustments in your hips and in your shoulders to maintain the connection in the center of the feet. How do you do that? You train it against the wall. So when you push your hands out here, as you're pushing your hands out, sink. So force doesn't land on your body. Force doesn't land on the wall. You aim to push into the wall, but you soften your shoulders. So force doesn't push you back or develop strongly in your body. And you start to notice the adjustments you can make that maintain your connection in the feet. You bring that into the form. You maintain your focus on releasing away from the crown of the head. You turn. As you turn, this movement shouldn't tighten you, shouldn't make you feel unstable. There should be a sinking movement through it. When you move to your back foot, don't initiate a movement. Initiate a letting go. The movement follows that letting go and draws you to your back foot. Turn. Maintain your stability. Sink forwards. Is your front leg receiving your body weight, or is your front leg keeping you up? Is your front hip joint softening and changing? Is your lower back changing? Are your feet receiving your body weight? Is your front foot getting pressed onto the ground by your body weight as you go in? If not, that's what you work with, feeling it. Holding the ball, activate the back leg, do what you need to do in the form, but concentrate on the main principle. Go through the form. Certain moves will be easier than others. Certain moves you'll be able to understand and feel certain moves better than others. Try to take what you've got from a good move, a move that you do well, into a move that you don't understand so well. There'll be certain moves that are complicated, where you don't feel as grounded. For me, personally, waving hands like clouds. This move here, sink and step, is difficult. Sink and step, difficult. Without stopping, but to keep the changes fluid and continuous, I have to focus more strongly. So for me, this is a great move because my habit is to hold on here, tighten up, step in. What I'm working on is softening and loosening and making sure that my grounding starts much, much earlier and continues much longer. So it's part of that change. Okay, when I'm doing it well and I remember, I can do it. That's my training. My training are the things that I find difficult that I can bring to light and I can find a way of doing them. I've talked enough tonight. I've given you a picture for practice. I've given you hopefully some ideas to think about your Tai Chi. Not necessarily tonight to train together, but some ideas for where's your Tai Chi going? An assessment of what you do well for yourself, how the years you've been practicing bring you to the place where you're at, and where are the holes, where are the gaps, where are the bits you don't yet understand, how you can see a movement forwards, how you can fill out those gaps in your practice. So I wish you well. Ask me any questions of any of this, and we'll continue our study together. Thank you very much.